and welcome to the Amplifying Scientific Innovation video podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Sophia Onye, founder and CEO of the Sophia Consulting Firm, a life science marketing and communications consultancy that was established in New York City with the goal of amplifying scientific innovation. The goal of this podcast is to showcase scientific innovation stemming from global life science companies through conversations with senior leaders who share their unique leadership journey, corporate vision, and industry outlook. My guest today is Dr. Russell Weiner, Head Bioanalysis, Biomarker Development, and Diagnostics at the Bill and Melinda Gates Medical Research Institute, a nonprofit biotech organization dedicated to accelerating the product development timeline for diseases that disproportionately affect the world's poorest populations, starting with malaria, tuberculosis, and diarrheal diseases that combined cause 5 deaths every minute. Russ is a senior level biopharmaceutical professional with over 25 years of direct expertise in pharmaceutical and biologic drug discovery and development in the US and Asia, inclusive of clinical trial conduct and building regulated bioanalytical, molecular biomarker, and companion diagnostic organizations. Russ was directly involved in supporting the development and approval of several innovative therapies, inclusive of Merck's immunotherapy checkpoint inhibitor, Keytruda, and its associated DACO-PD-L1 companion diagnostic assay. Russ is a strategic thinker and recognized thought leader on regulated bioanalysis and biomarker assay development. He obtained a PhD in biochemistry from Albany Medical College and a BS in biochemistry from the State University of New York at Stony Brook. Excitingly, Russ was recently recognized as a fellow of the American Association of Pharmaceutical Scientists, AAPS. In fact, I connected with Russ over a decade ago when I was still a medicinal chemistry graduate student supporting the creation of the AAPS's Biotech Section Student Committee, BSSC. It's been an honor and pleasure to be supported and mentored by Russ over the years. Welcome to the show, Russ.
Hey, thank you. You're more than welcome.
Thank you. And I always start the podcast with the same question, which is, what is your definition of scientific innovation?
To me, I look at it as divergence, the ability to bring technologies together that otherwise would not be together in much the same way as you now have iPad type technology on your dishwasher or your refrigerator. The same thing we can do in situations where we bring people together with divergent backgrounds, divergent places of maybe where they grew up or their different ways of thinking, and we bring them together and have them think together. And the whole idea there is that normally things will come out that would never come together otherwise. We've seen this in technology. Where we bring people who are molecular biologists and we bring them with medicinal chemists, people who otherwise would never talk to one another, and have them develop new and innovative technologies.
Well, I think that's a powerful definition, and it might go down in my top 10 at this point, because one of the things you really emphasized was divergence, right? You cannot have the same type of thinking. There has to be some type of disruption. And you also mentioned diversity of thought, having people from different backgrounds coming together. We can all learn from each other. So I absolutely love that definition. So my next question for you is, what is your leadership mantra and how has it contributed to the leader that you are today?
Yeah, so as I've moved through the pharmaceutical industry, after 18 years of BMS, I was then recruited to Merck, and I really wasn't sure what to do. And the hiring manager said something to me that I've kept as my mantra, and that is embrace the fear. And if you embrace the fear, the bigger the challenge, the bigger the rewards. And with that, I push that to the staff, where I want them to take risks. Now, that's a great thing to say, but most staff are fearful of taking that risks and taking those risks and worrying about some repercussions if they fail. So with that, embrace the fear, take on risks. You also have to be able to take a bullet at any time for your team if they do something that doesn't work.
Wow. I mean, I think we could all learn something from you today. And I think in these times that are very uncertain, the ability to embrace the fear speaks around hope, optimism, and positivity. And I think we need those types of sort of more positive messages in today's times and always really. So thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
And then of course I'm sure you've been asked this before. So why did you make the switch from a scientific leadership role in big pharma to the Bill and Melinda Gates Research Institute?
Yeah, so that was another big embrace the fear. So one was I knew I was going to be in the Boston area at some point in my career, with it being the kind of the center of biomedical research, and having been in New Jersey, which used to be a nice center of pharmaceutical research, that's changed. And you mentioned earlier Keytruda. So once I developed Keytruda, that was kind of the pinnacle of my career. You know, one of the top oncology compounds that I've recommended to friends and family who have had, you know, stage 3, stage 4 disease and have actually, you know, gone into remission. And I figured it was time to give back after 25 and actually now it's almost 30. It's time to give back and close out, you know, my career in the next, you know, 20 years or so. You know, working in areas where people need us more, you know, people who aren't getting the help, they aren't getting the medications, they aren't getting the focus. And we're seeing that in COVID here as well.
Right.
It was time to give back. And I like the idea of focusing on our mantra for the company is lives saved versus dollars earned.
Yeah, I mean, Russ, I think you and I have always connected, not just regarding the pharmaceutical industry, but also around public health. And you know, I was born in Nigeria. So when you speak about giving back by doing research on diseases that may not be predominant here in the US, but malaria, for example, every 2 minutes, a child dies from malaria. So I'm really grateful that you're looking into the nonprofit sector. But then it also makes me think about my next question, which is, what are you doing now? Can you provide a top line overview of your role at the Bill and Melinda Gates Medical Research Institute?
Yeah, so the key of the Gates Medical Research Institute was really to bring people together and allow them to apply what they learned in pharmaceutical research to low and middle income areas. And so in my case, in personalized medicine, in diagnostics and companion diagnostics, the goal was really to bring forward ways of doing things faster, better, cheaper in terms of bioanalysis. So in my case, you know, I run the regulated pharmacokinetics group, the diagnostics group, the biomarker group, and all sample and sample biorepositories. The real goal, and the one thing that really brought me to the Medical Research Institute was to allow me to collaborate with people in the foundation and do what we call develop assays that work under a tree, literally work under a tree. And so point of care tests that we bring out into the field, whether it's on a backpack, on a motorbike, whether it looks like a pregnancy test to do TB detection or malaria detection, to me, as a scientist and innovation part, that's what keeps me really moving in that space. So it's really all clinical trials, all bioassay work.
Wow, that's really remarkable how you've taken all that great knowledge that you've built in the pharmaceutical industry and now you're applying it here to infectious diseases, which I cannot imagine a more important time to be focused on that. But then I also think that a role like that will come with some of its unique challenges as well. So in that line, what unique challenges have you faced as a leader in the nonprofit sector so far, especially as we think about the challenges that we continue to face amid COVID-19?
So I think it's more so where we're working. So in the nonprofit space, I mean, there is a budget. We do, you know, report up to the Gates Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, but we're working in places that are so challenging logistically. Roads that don't exist. You know, normally I would go and I would audit a lab and I asked them, do you have a backup power generator? And they would say, yes. I forget now, I have to ask, do you have a fuel supply? They may not have a fuel supply. We want to put out something as simple as a pregnancy test before we put someone on trial. Normally you would take that home, you'd buy that, you'd run it and you'd look and you see that little plus sign or something. We put that in a clinical trial, but some of these places, people don't have glasses. They can't read it properly. It's as simple as that. In areas where there's unrest, moving a clinical sample that needs to go from the patient, particularly in TB, within 6 hours to the lab to be processed. And if there's a little bit of a protest and the highways are blocked, we've lost that cohort of patients. So it's really the most logistically challenging issues that we deal with every day.
Yeah, I mean, I can completely relate because I can tell you that things are a lot easier now that I live in the US, and I've been living here for almost 2 decades now, relative to my childhood in Nigeria. The lack of medical infrastructure compounded by even roads and power not being available, etc. So those are very difficult challenges, and I applaud you on your ability to just embrace the fear, so to speak, in this case as well. So my next question for you is, in your opinion, of course, what could we have done differently to mitigate the impact of COVID-19?
So I will preface this as my opinion.
Yes.
You know who I work for, so it's not their opinion.
Yes.
But it's actually quite simple, and it's not something it's not rocket science. The reason we're in this position is we did not have a national testing tracing strategy. Period. I think that it was funny at the early days when people didn't even want to be traced. There was an app that was activated on everybody's phone, and now it's an invasion of privacy. And this is where we are. So we have our privacy, but we have so many deaths. The ability to get those testing, centralize the testing. Right now we have, I think there's 300 EUAs in both rapid antigen and PCR tests of differing qualities. There's been some that have been removed, off the market. Their EUA has been rescinded. And those situations, we really could have said, hey, we're going to centralize some of this testing. I know I can get a sample from anywhere in the world in 24 hours. So why not develop, you take big areas, big, stadium type, venues, and just like we set up hospitals, set up testing, roll it out there, get FedEx, you put it in a FedEx hub next to one of the FedEx airports, and run all those samples. Right now, my son got tested yesterday. He still has to wait 2 to 4 days before he gets a result. And by that time, he's done with his quarantine. So not really, and people aren't going to quarantine when they get the test. So that's been the real issue.
I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. And sometimes the simplest solutions, the ones that are literally in your face, are always the best. But I think in this case, people went for data privacy and security without really understanding. I think there was a lack of understanding of why the data were being traced in the first place. So thank you for clarifying that. And then you've been in the industry for a while now. So how has the life science industry evolved in the past 15 years? And what role do you think translational medicine in particular will play in advancing scientific innovation?
Yeah, it's funny when I thought about that question, I thought about, well, where was I, 25 plus years ago? And I had, a reasonable sized team of 25 people all in the same building. And then I moved to another company and I had 75 people, but all of a sudden there were layoffs. Why were there layoffs? Because we didn't need the people. Why didn't we need the people? Because everything got outsourced. Things like bioanalysis, that's commodity now. Very few companies are doing that in-house. They're outsourcing that. They're outsourcing molecular assays, your diagnostic development. As that stuff goes out, there are fewer people inside. With fewer people inside, to the point of innovation, there's less time for people to actually spend and doing innovation. That has been the most challenging piece, because most large pharma, you always carry some sort of innovation goal.
Yeah.
And then the staff get really worried about that. And that's where the risk piece comes in. Take a risk, think about it. If you don't do well in that goal, you got 6 other goals to worry about, because people think about their pocketbook when it comes down to goals. So that's really been the big change is what is out. And when it's out, some management feels it's out and it's gone.
Right.
There's a trust and verify component. You can't just send it out. So maybe instead of having 25 people inside, you have 5. Exactly. And they watch the other 25 that are out. But you have to check and verify. And some companies believe in putting headcount there, others don't. And if they don't, usually things are good only until they explode.
Right. There's been so much outsourcing being done in the industry. And at the height of COVID, I think the challenges with international travel actually made it very clear to your point that if you're outsourcing bioanalysis, for example, and you no longer have a bioanalysis expert within the company, what exactly are you going to do? So thank you for bringing that up. It's maybe reducing versus just eliminating, and those are two different approaches. So thank you for that. So now if we focus on the developing world, which you've come to get in touch with more closely now, what role has technology played in advancing bioanalysis and translational medicine at large? Do you think it's going fast? Like, what are your thoughts on the role of technology in these developing countries?
So it was interesting. So in the early years of my career, I spent a lot of time in India building capability, capacity, building drug discovery development, type labs, and things seem to be, working very well there. But technology wasn't on the leading edge, right? It was always secondary. Recently, in working particularly in South Africa, I was pleasantly surprised about how much technology was there. So much so that they're talking about personalized medicine. They're talking about, diagnostic testing, and I had figured that was outside the price range of everybody. But the goal is, if you can get that price range into something that works, they can get the same sort of oncology care that we get here in the US, at least at the standpoint of diagnosis. And the same thing holds true. I mean, if you go back, not even 10 years, maybe, 5+ years before they had really good molecular technology to diagnose TB, that used to take weeks or months, to get really good diagnosis, particularly if you're looking at, drug resistant types of TB. It's 90 minutes to an hour now, using gene expert type systems from Cepheid. Having that has changed the face of how TB is recognized. And just like COVID, if you let someone with TB go into an area where the housing is not traditional housing, is more these houses that are literally miles and miles and miles of touching one another, poor sanitation, all you need is one person to really wipe that out.
Yeah, I mean, I think the contrast is so glaring, and one can only hope that with efforts by the Gates Foundation and other organizations really that are committed to the developing world, that things might change. Because one of the things that we've learned through COVID is, to the point you made earlier, it's a global world. If you ignore the problems in South Africa, it doesn't mean that a South African or Nigerian is not going to get in the next plane and come over here. So we have to find a better way to sort of manage diseases and to make sure that we have a better knowledge of science in developing countries as well.
I would say every disease is one flight away.
Exactly, right? And you never know. People are not going to stop flying no matter what, right? So my second to last question for you then is, thinking broadly, what are some key consideration factors that will be important for sustaining innovation in the life science industry?
So here's where you have to get the managers in a room and really speak truth. They want innovation, but innovation comes with a cost. It's not a dollar cost, it's a time cost. And so while I always had my team have an innovation goal, I also had to provide them with the time, whether it's a 10%, a 5%, a 20%. You can't do the divergence. You can't get those people together just to meet and talk and plan, let alone conduct the experiments without providing the time. And so when you're doing research planning or research resource forecasting into the 4 to 5 to 10-year planning, you have to put in not just the projects, but you have to put in innovation as if it is a project. And this way, your headcount will go up 5%, 10%, or even a few percent, just to build that in so that you have the allowed time. Because innovation by some management is seen as fun time. You're not contributing to that blockbuster drug that's going to get out there in the next 2 years, but you are contributing to that blockbuster drug that's going to be out there in 10 years, and not preparing proactively for the future. You get no innovation.
Absolutely. I love the focus on proactivity, because I also think that if, for example, we thought about infectious diseases and prioritized that 5-10 years ago, we will not be so shocked by what's going on in today's world. So thank you for really emphasizing the importance of continuity and diversity of thought and how we play a big role in sustaining innovation. So my final question is very simple. Do you have any other thoughts or commentary that you'd like to share?
No, in the innovation, I wanted to finish with really particularly the young people who are really out there to do something different. Make time for innovation, continue to learn. If you're in a small company and you're not surrounded by other people that you can collaborate with, particularly now with COVID, everything's online. You can take a course in microbiology, molecular biology, even if it's just on simple technologies, go back and bring something together. Think about it as your way of giving back, because those technologies, particularly those that are developed in academic spaces, can be brought to those foundations, not-for-profit, Gates Foundation, the Wellcomes Foundation. There's so many foundations out there that will provide grant and grant seed money that allows you to really spend that time justifiably, because now you have some grant money to develop that next technology that'll come out 5 or 10 years from now. If we wait till then, we're too late.
Thank you. It also ties into your leadership mantra. You have to embrace the fear. So even if you're scared of microbiology or chemistry, embrace it, because the only thing that we should fear is that fear itself. So thank you so much for such an engaging discussion today. It's been an absolute honor and pleasure. And of course, I look forward to staying in touch.
Thank you. Stay safe, stay healthy.
You too now. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.